Hey folks, welcome back to the Woodruff Cast. Today I am joined by my friend and colleague, astrologer Jessica Murray. Jessica works out of San Francisco and publishes the popular astrology site and blog mothersky.com. Thanks for joining us, and here is Jessica Murray. I absolutely love that. And
Thank
that
you.
that color, that it's a kind of a Cancerian green, or it's coming across your blouse.
Really? You see it as green, not
Well,
blue
a
from your
misty,
screen.
what is the color of it?
I mean, to my eyes, it's light blue,
Oh, okay. That works. But
but these things change depending on the screen.
honey, I'll say, in fact, I'm in the middle of transitioning as we talk. I'm going to join one of those trans sleeper terrorist cells that,
That caused all the ills of the world.
oh my
You
God.
know, Laverne Cox, she was brilliant. She came up with this line, they're focusing on the wrong 1%.
Right.
It's only 1%. And that MAGA can't see that it's the other 1%. I'm sorry. We need to talk about Saturn-Neptune because it's turning everybody's brains to mush.
Well, I want to explain for the listener, viewer, your use of the term fog of war, because I think that'll be the rubric that this lands under today between us. And are you doing a double entendre with that? Like the uncertainty that's
Yeah.
involved with, or the side that's shrouded and concealed as far as maneuvers that an enemy might be.
There are all these layers, exactly.
Okay.
You think of a teacher of mine used to say that Mars isn't the root of war, it's only the agent.
Hmm.
Neptune is the cause of war. Mars alone can't lure millions of young men to their deaths and make whole countries sign up for incredible suffering and loss. Only Neptune has that much power. So there's this idea of the illusion, the fantasies that are going nuts right now
Hmm.
across the world, which are behind not only, like you suggest, literal militarism, Aries, but the whole crumbling of belief systems that's making people crazy. Saturn, Neptune, the reality structures. You were talking about this in your podcast with Aiden, where
Yeah.
everything is unhinged. And of course, it's at the root of the US chart. It's falling at the nadir of the Sibley chart. So the very foundations of the country are in this mass crumbling of reality structure.
Yeah. And then as we're talking right now, I think, I don't know, there's I don't, 100,000 at the Charlie Kirk Memorial,
Fantasies.
including Elon Musk, the entire cabinet and all. But I bring that up because it's such in keeping with your point about the Saturn conjunction with Neptune to the nadir and that ending. And then now this huge martyrdom, Neptune, of this faction of the country for a podcaster. I mean, let's call it what it is. This was an agitprop pop uh, podcaster that,
He was a podcaster. That's all
yeah,
he was. And they're
it
making
wasn't
him into a
Martin
saint
Luther
because they
King.
needed one. He was
But
not Martin Luther King. But,
but it's so
go ahead.
it's so in keeping with the cartoon like circus like atmosphere that I just can't quite understand with the GOP and MAGA and all of that.
That's why I think the only way we're going to get at this, get anywhere, is to look at it as a symbol. Like these public figures were vomited up by the mass mind to
Hmm.
serve a certain evolutionary purpose, if you want to call it that.
Or de-evolution, but sure.
Devolution. I'm not saying that purpose means going forward, certainly not in our lifetimes. But you have to break it down to the raw archetypes, which we as astrologers have the luxury to do, to see it from this distance. That the foundation of the US psyche, if you believe in the Sibley chart, which I think has been proven, rectified over and over,
Yep.
sort of proves the point that Chris Hedges says, and you and I have said, that in the last days of all empires, the idiots take over, the insane asylum takes over, and the people in power mirror the collective stupidity of a civilization that's detached itself from reality. That's
Yep.
Saturn, Neptune. I mean, we're all having to navigate this. If you look at astrology in terms of that there's a group entity,
Hmm.
the USA chart. But on an individual level, there are other truer teachings which we can get to later. And in fact, I'd like to close with them because they offer a glimmer of hope about how we could cope with all this. Questioning ordinary reality. Saturn Neptune doesn't have to be pathological,
Hmm.
but it is. It's being, you know, played out that way as in these cults, and cults are Neptune. It's the martyrdom fantasy is
Hmm.
a perfect representation of all these Neptunian issues, which the USA is melting down with, like this patriotism, which is completely detached from the reality of what it might mean to serve your country or to have a sense of duty towards
Hmm.
your country. And we're talking about Mr. Bone Spurs here leading the attack. But I think it's fascinating to consider how Neptune fogs in the mass mind along, the patriotism thing is mixed up with the fact that the USA has a cancer cluster in it, which is in arrested development, low level cancer. But patriotism is always a kind of cult. It's based on extreme emotionalism, not practicality or logic, right? It's based on these winsome images of perfection that can't happen here on Earth and
Hmm.
delusions of grandeur, or if you're Trump, delusions of godhead. And
Yeah.
deploying that fiction for Kirk. This idea of a morally cleansed future once you've cleared the scene of the detritus. That's Neptune. Neptune governs heaven and Valhalla
Mm.
and hypnosis and gaslighting. And as you pointed out, that was marvelous. Neptune governs gas and also lying, bingo, gaslighting.
Hmm.
But, you know, oh my God, like canceling the annual hunger report that counts so many people are living in hunger that he just did. Trump just fired the guy or canceled it, that
Yeah.
annual report, so people wouldn't know this gaslighting, firing the Bureau of Labor Statistics director because if nobody's there to count things, then they don't exist. It's Soviet style gaslighting and it's Neptune.
Hmm. But to the fog of war metaphor again, and the reason I brought up the eclipse chart, which of course is like followed right by the autumn equinox, is
Right,
that
right.
Mars square over to Pluto, this time
Yes,
in Scorpio. I think it's exact in the equinox chart.
yes.
But we've been talking about that ever since we started tracking that during the inauguration,
Yeah,
or it was even before that, like the election and then the
that Mars
inauguration.
kicks off these larger transits.
Yeah. And then now here we are with Mars squaring again in fixed sign, squaring Pluto amidst this build up to well, I just feel like there's a fomenting of violence that is coming from, you know,
Well, this is the Aries part of things. This is the low level default of Aries.
hmm
And we see it in several places here, but I think we have to go back to the idea that the USA, the natal chart, the sort of the original group mind has a Mars square Neptune, so that its militarism, its violence is all clouded over with fog.
hmm
In other words, the fog of war is already a theme in the country's natal chart. Mars is in the seventh house. You remember the
Yeah,
Sibley?
yeah.
Mars is in the seventh of open enemies, the military. Neptune is up in the ninth. This is the house of belief systems. So it's the placement of conspiracy theories and paranoid fantasies. And, the QAnon storm is this idealized Neptune.
hmm
Vision, the rapture is the same thing. Very simple, cartoon like, good versus evil, ninth house worldview. And it's square Mars. So it's like bring out the sword and the guns and the tanks to fight evil in this stick figure reductionistic
Yeah.
way.
Well, not to mention the Second Amendment and our obsession,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
worship Neptune of guns. Uh,
right. Worship of guns.
uh,
Charlie Kirk was all about.
yeah, I'm at a loss to I, I try to drop into an inquiry related to these themes that has some something like uplifting on the other side of it.
Yeah,
Not to
I
be a pessimist or nihilistic.
if I could offer a little historical context
Yeah,
here to
sure.
how we got to this place. It didn't come out of a vacuum. The bigger picture is that Pax Americana is melting. This was the worldview that prevailed since 1945, keeping the globe balanced enough to avoid a world war, where the USA grew into a hyperpower. It hasn't always been one,
hmm
but now that's melting down, and it's been a gradual process, but it's changed the parameters, unhinged the world, as you were saying in your last podcast. Nobody knows how to interpret global affairs anymore. And on another level, like you say, it's been messing with the whole mass psyche. There's been a loss of center in terms of the collective consciousness. So that, and in terms of global power shifts. And
hmm
now we're in the Saturn Neptune phase of this breakdown, which takes off. I don't want to get too, stop me if I'm going too far afield, but it can really only be understood in terms of the last Saturn Neptune conjunction, which was in 1989 when the walls came tumbling down in the Soviet Union, right?
Right.
And after that, we had Pluto and Capricorn 2008 to 24, where government systems crumbled and Pluto and Uranus squared each other and made this grand cross in the USA at the same time that it was having a Pluto return. So that was when the collective American mind, in its ineffable wisdom, vomited up a sociopath as president who's now on a terror breaking down the infrastructure against the backdrop of a populace that, like you say, is armed to the teeth.
hmm
So this is a balls out Pluto scenario. But remember, it wasn't just Pluto in that Pluto return. It's opposed to Mercury in the US chart. Mercury was the media, the death of old school broadcasting. And as you've noted, how perfect Pluto in Aquarius, the death,
Yeah.
Pluto of the airwaves, Aquarius. And, Trump is trying to do a makeover, Pluto, of the media, Mercury, in his own image with these lawsuits and canceling media figures and journalists. And Mercury is in the eighth house of mergers and the US chart. So he's trying to manipulate these big media mergers. It all fits in. And I think that, you know, we need to talk about what he's doing on the ground, so to speak. I think before we can get to, I'm doing it a little backwards, before we can get to what Neptune really wants to happen, right? Which is the
Yes.
true essential meaning of the transit for the human mind. But first, we have to call what's happening. He sees himself as a media star. It's a joke. I mean, we have to keep ourselves laughing in this. He's so proud of his little cameo walk on in Home Alone. Did you notice that he put that in the lawsuit against the New York Times?
Right.
He he complained in that lawsuit that they underestimated the importance of his stardom in that movie.
Right.
Part of his fantasy. And remember, he's just a projection, I think, of where the whole mass mind is. That's the root problem here.
So say more about that, the mass mind, and then Trump's like the tip of the iceberg of it, or
I
you're
see
seeing
these
it.
I see these public figures as having two dimensions. First, the individual way, which we can look at their charts like we often do, as we would look at a client's chart and see them as individuals working through whatever karmic lessons. But then we can see them as more than just one person anymore. Once they rise to that level of public visibility, they become a stand in for the mass mind. They become a representation, a personification of something that the group entity is working through. So we have, you know, Neptune in Aries comes along, and this militaristic urge, Aries, at the behest of irrational fantasies, Neptune, in the USA chart. I'm visualizing it, right? That square.
Hmm.
The placement, for example, is personified again by Hegseth, the head of the army, Mars, who's a drunk, Neptune.
Well, now it's not Department of Defense, it's Department of
It's
War.
Department of
So
War,
you're right on
which is a
point there.
joke. We've got a commander in chief, Mars, who's asleep at the wheel, Neptune, and who thinks that by renaming it, but it can't win because his version of the military is from the World War II movies he saw on TV as a kid. This isn't what, right? This isn't what
Hmm.
the modern world is about anymore. It's not about conquest anymore. There's been a major shift in the way the whole world sees wars since the A bomb. This is the breakdown of the Pax Americana. It's been since we discovered that we could have an Armageddon if any one country
Sure.
maintained sole control. It has been a whole different military. And you have the idea now of an age of information. We have cyber warfare. We have diplomacy has supposedly, replaced conquest. In the
Hmm.
16th century, they only had that. They saw military only as conquering other for economic prosperity. Now, these days in the modern world, we have trying to negotiate and keep things in check, which is why we haven't had a world war for 80 years.
Well,
But
nuclear
he doesn't get that.
arsenals, nuclear
That's what I mean.
arsenals. Yeah, that I think
You
keeps
can't
things
afford to have a world war.
exactly.
But he doesn't get that. He's too dense to get that. So, like everything else in his nostalgic, unrealistic, arrested development worldview, he thinks of the army as being something like the parades that North Korea puts on, which made which was so pathetic by contrast to see his own creaky ass parade, right?
Yeah.
He can't do it. Anyway, this is not looking clearly at what Neptune, at what Mars is really about.
Hmm.
It's a false image, and he personifies that by being stuck in the past.
But then that's the see, this is, I think, the problem on the Democrat side, if we have to go to a partisan way of, or bipartisan way of taking it apart, where the thing about MAGA is it does offer like a grand, albeit crazy narrative. And I don't see anything like that coming from the Democrats, except maybe we could say Mamdani, which we can talk about later, possibly.
Mm-hmm,
Um, but there's, I mean, when you're talking Neptune, it's like a kid going to bed at night and it's like, okay, mom, dad, tell me a story, before I go off into Neptune dreamland.
mm-hmm,
And there somehow the MAGA movement and Trump as the figurehead has
mm-hmm.
usurped the
Has captured that.
that and that part, like you're saying about the Cancerian section of the US chart, it's like Arrested Development, tell me a
Mm-hmm,
story, make America
mm-hmm.
great again, all of that kind of stuff, which we all understand is he, I don't even think Trump, I don't understand it. I don't even think he believes in that. It's just all
Oh no,
smoke
I
and
don't either.
mirrors and stage sets moved around. And
No, he doesn't know. He doesn't. He's like walking in a dream himself. And I think he's, as a person, we could talk about him as a person, but I think it's at least as valuable to talk about these forces that are moving through the world and the group entity that is the USA that do have a meaning. So we can't turn our back on it and say, oh, I just don't like that and I'm going to vote for the Democrats. They're like happening for a reason, even if it's very hard and even painful to articulate the reason. But we see, for example, autocracy is happening all over the world, not just here.
exactly.
And the
Yeah.
thing they all do, which he is such a hideously perfect representation of, they do certain things in common. They make all foreign policy about individuals, like when he was going to go to, use his personal relationship with Vlad to stop the war in Ukraine. I mean, he's living in a fantasy that that's possible. But it reminds me of how Liz Green said in the 70s, that Jungian astrologer,
Yeah.
that with the Saturn square, the sun in the USA chart, that maybe the USA really does want a king. She said,
Mm-hmm.
maybe America really does need a king.
Mm-hmm.
And, because it's all about the mercurial whims of one man. She was thinking of
Mm-hmm.
the old style kings,
Mm-hmm.
not King Chuck over there now in modern times, but more like Henry VIII.
Yes.
And as we all know from grade school, if not from Lin-Manuel Miranda, that it isn't, our government was set up to keep it from being all about one man. But Trump really does represent that thing
Mm-hmm.
in the US psyche that she was talking about, which is, he says, I'm proudly says, I'm the only one who I take advice from. It's a government of one. The problem is this one is a cheeseball TV reality guy from Queens who's
Mm-hmm.
an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he announced the other day that maybe, people want a dictator.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, he's dropped that bomb. Okay,
This is
so
it. Mm-hmm.
all of this is swirling around, and I think I sent you this morning an email from my friend in Japan saying, I don't really understand all this stuff that's like going on in the United States. Like it's just it seems like a form of, chaos and um disbelief, I think, to other people around the globe. But here we are. The way that you're describing the Neptunian function and how that's playing out within group mind, how do you see that as something redemptive, or where does that
Right,
fit in? I don't I don't really know if I think you can look at Neptune in a way how it's impacting an individual and then
right.
hope for them to find the right notes in that
Well, I
scale.
think, each of us was born to be alive at this moment and not in some other era and then
Yeah,
not in some other landmass. And it follows that each of us can respond to it creatively or not based on our, in our own lives in some way, no matter how small or unlikely the gesture, that it would be a response. It's about engaging somehow in a way that comes from the heart of the chart. We were all given the equipment, very idiosyncratic little ways to respond or not.
mhm.
I mean, each of us has a choice point. If you believe in astrology and that transits are teachings, I don't know how you could not believe in this. That you know, like when people have a choice point, even small little individuals who aren't in the public sphere. But we also can look at the people who are in the public positions. And like I was saying before, a public figure, something else happens where they
Mhm.
become more than just individuals. Like even this federal prosecutor, Eric Siebert, in New York, he was ordered by Trump to find evidence of mortgage fraud
Yo,
against that, Tish James, the attorney general, and he refused. That was a choice point. And he was in a position to make or not. And then you have Bob Iger, who did not refuse. He caved, the CEO of Disney. He gave in folded like a cheap suit, like
I
Scott
totally.
Galloway said.
So
And he made a choice.
that's right. And okay, so I'm going to swing back around to what I was getting to about the Neptunian part of the transit in Aries, where individuals reassert their power. And in this fucking country, it's all about money.
Mm-hmm.
So just
Right.
it's a small example, but after the Jimmy Kimmel thing, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people canceled their Disney Plus subscription. It seems
Yeah.
like a small move, but these
But
people,
it wasn't a small move, I don't think.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
because the bottom line determines everything, and then how these things are prepped to go
Mm-hmm.
onto the stock market and merge into another
Right.
corporation. I think, and this is what I'm telling clients lately, it's like, look at how you're spending your money, not just your
Yeah.
attention. Again, Neptune, the fog of the internet, as another, situational awareness of out of touchness and being lost in the frickin' frack. So how do you pay attention? How do you pay your money? What are you doing with it? Because
Exactly.
I think, or my understanding from what I suss out from history of empires and all that, this is nothing new we're living through. As Chris Hedges said, we're all, Antifa now that are like pushing back on this kind of fascism. And Trump, he's just allowing this gobbling up of the corporations to come in and grab more of the pie for
It's what's
that's
happening. That's what Putin does. I mean, him and his
exactly.
oligarch buddies in the wild Russia is starving. But
So
he is. He's
this is an old, this is a repeating, recurring
totally
story,
not new
right?
at all. He's squeezing as much money as he can out of this job before he leaves Washington.
But
But
but to your point, okay, we're born at this time, as you frame it. That what how is history and its repeating, do you feel that's going to be interrupted? I mean, is this a group of souls, to use that notion,
uh-huh.
that have the gumption or something within their reading of what's happening?
I see what you're saying. You
Yeah,
know what you're
like,
asking.
and then wouldn't that be, as a collective movement, another version of Neptune that opens up something that's of the other facets of Neptune to do with compassion and empathy and that kind of psychic healing or whatever that would come
Well,
forward?
what that's the truer meaning of the transit.
So
But
say
most
more about that.
people, I
Say,
mean, it is those features that you just cited are what Neptune really is about. See, I don't see Neptune as equaling deception, lying, hypnosis, all those things I said. I see those as a misunderstanding of what
hmm
Neptune is really about. I
hmm
don't see the negative characteristics of any symbol as being like their meaning. I see that as being a misunderstanding of their meaning. And that
right.
everybody quotes them first because they're the most exciting and they grab our attention. But what you said, obviously, Neptune is represents the capacity to feel compassion and empathy. And when people aren't spiritually mature enough, they default to that other stuff,
Yeah,
the fog and the cultism and
yeah.
the losing the self in some unconscious way.
hmm
So, my sense about the money thing is that Pluto's in the second house of the USA chart, and we're the most materialistic culture that's ever existed. We've made a religion of money. That means something. It means that it's bringing to the fore, it's squeezing to the earth plane level, if you will, a, a version of materialism so that everybody can see it, so that it can be this balls out obvious, so that you can then choose from your own center of your own chart to buy into that or not.
hmm
So, you know, I think that these people who are slavishly um, acquiring more and more, like even what's her name, DeVos with her yachts, while the Department of Education and everything is being gutted and rural hospitals are being closed. And this big, horrible bill is, increasing income inequality in these more and more blatant ways so that people can see it. It's like putting it in bold-faced print
hmm
so that Americans who
hmm
exist in this Pluto in the second house karma, if you will, are being schooled in the contrasts about materialism. And we can look at all these people who, with their, I'm thinking of Bezos's wife and all her hideous mask of plastic surgery and the junk they go through. They're not happy. Everybody knows that. And we look at Trump and his scraping up with the grift and the billions. It's never enough. These people are hollowed out in the middle.
Yeah, it's like
So
filling a black hole.
their heart is a black hole. I don't think people miss that. On some level, everybody can see it. He's a walking corpse. He's miserable. He doesn't have any love in his life. I mean, he's just an example. There's so
Yeah.
many examples of rich, grotesquely wealthy people who, with divorce after divorce and suicide attempts and drug addiction, that it's really not a secret that money doesn't buy you happiness. So I think everybody, depending on their level of spiritual maturity, it always comes down to that. And it's an X factor, sees through the cultural canonization, leonization of money to see something deeper than that, to see through that cultural narrative.
Hmm.
Or they don't. Millions don't. But it's never
Well,
been about numbers, how many
right.
people are conscious. Go ahead.
I'm having two different thoughts come up
Okay.
simultaneously. My Venus and Gemini responding to your Venus and Gemini.
Yeah.
Um, I I I just think of like in the Tao how it teaches, when one side of something is up and in front of us, it's also equally bringing the backside forward as well. It's sort of the yin yang idea.
Yeah, with a dot in the middle of each.
Right, but so we're seeing what I consider to be grotesquerie. If I was a MAGA person, I would be probably reveling and celebrating and all of this stuff that you and I kind of cringe around. But like your point, how emphatic it is, how in our face it is, how polychromatically glaring it is. Right behind that, I think, is this other side of the what we're talking about now, this Neptunian transmission. And like, here's an example. I was at coffee the other day, and this is a very, democratic leaning, liberal leaning island that I live on. And it's tourist season, so different people come to the coffee shop where I go work in the morning. And I was sitting there, and in walked obviously a MAGA couple. He was in like a black t-shirt with those kind of Confederacy emblems on the shoulder, and then and I was struck by the back of the shirt. It was a giant American flag printed the wrong way, and then all of the bottom of it was shredded and disintegrating. This
Wow.
emblem.
Neptune on the IC.
I totally, and at first I'm sitting there, I put down my pen, and I kind of recoiled from them. And then I kind of was watching them, and I think they got a vibe hit that they were in kind of a hippie-ish or liberal or whatever kind of environment. And then I don't know, I just felt my heart break for them. I thought, wow, they're having their moment now in US history.
Mm-hmm.
As we look at it, it's Cucamonga. But for them and their grievances, having this MAGA moment and the pushback on the trans bathrooms and the men are turning into women and I don't recognize my country and DEI and all the stuff that when Trump came in it was like boom boom boom, take it down, take it down, take it down, take, and then this rush for them of finally, we're getting heard. We want normalcy again and all of that. And I just thought, well, yeah, okay, the pendulum swung that way now, like from,
Okay.
well, I think having a black president when Obama was in was
Right.
probably like
Definitely.
a really big deal for those still
Bigger deal than
fighting
I
the lost
realized it
cause. The
at the
lost
time.
cause version 2.0 reasserts
Mm-hmm.
itself. But I don't know. My whole point in telling this story is
Mm-hmm.
I felt that Neptune Aries in a very personal way through my own circuitry about this situation and kind of softening all around through understanding, but also kind of
Mm-hmm.
getting another view of the whole structure of everything.
Yeah. I mean, the pendulum for sure, and the Obama, but even if you move into the way that Trump is losing just about everything he tries, his failures are making him more and more ruthless. So it's kind of hard to see. But we back up just a little bit,
But
right? We see what?
But that's some of the beauty of all, like you saw him the other day, the guy said to him, well, he goes, well, I'm suing the New York Times. And the reporter said, well, no, you've lost. The judge threw that out. He goes, no, no, I'm winning. I'm winning more and more. And I just thought, is it like the cognitive dissonance? Is it
Disconnect.
blowing people's
Yeah.
minds? Well,
But
because
pretty soon, exactly. I mean, how can they not see? He said he'd
exactly.
win Ukraine in one day, he'd solve the Gaza horror show, he'd fix inflation, which is going up. No jobs are being created. He was going to rebuild the country from within by coming down on immigration. But it turns out people don't cotton to the black vans and the masked ICE people. And the big bloated bill, are you kidding? People are seeing that they're going to be kicked off Medicare. This surge is not going to be so great. It doesn't scream America greatness to
I
them.
understand. It's just
So if it's going to tip,
people aren't feeling the big, beautiful bill yet. But
not
boy,
yet,
I
maybe
think
they
when they
will.
do,
Yeah,
then there'll be some
yeah. Then there will. There's going
tears.
to be a correction, as they say on Wall Street, of this bloated turn that you're talking about, the surge that they should be in their glory and
Hmm.
celebrating. But MAGA may be riven by disputes all over the place, like RFK's vaccine thing, less and less consensus within MAGA about that. And the
Yeah.
Epstein files has been a rift. I'm doing a little earthquake fracture here
Yes.
in MAGA, and even bombing Iran and support for Israel is not monolithic with MAGA.
Yes. And I think, on to something there. And this also happens in these kind of cuckoo regimes where the insiders do, because they're all power, ego, maniacal driven
Right.
souls, they start turning on each
They
other.
turn on each other, and
And
that's the hope. I
yeah,
put that in my hope list. Remember, I told you I have a hope list. One of them is Newsom's trolling. One of them is for the midterms to turn the House blue, which is actually probable, not just possible.
right.
One of them, but the main one is the right turning against the far right, like Nick Fuentes gropers versus the middle class MAGAs, which some people, I don't know if we want to get to this whole thing, which some people think was the involved in the Charlie Kirk shooting. That Groypers think that he
Reuters, yeah.
was, he was a hit from Israel, from the Mossad, which on the face of it is hilarious. This
It's
lame
so
little
wild.
terminally online hapless young man is a Mossad agent. But,
Right.
we're talking about the rifts within the right and the ego versus ego, like you say. Look at Bannon versus Musk, or look at Musk versus Sam Altman.
Yeah.
They're going to rend each other apart sooner or later. I love how Loomer called MTG a lying fake Christian whore. I mean, we're just eating our popcorn on the sidelines watching this.
Yeah. And in the
They
back of my mind, I'm going politics as usual, though usually there's more decorum until MAGA got
Usually there's a little bit of decorum, my
it's just
God.
like,
But you said something earlier that struck me. These people are irrational and conspiratorial and not prone to compromise, and they can't govern.
yeah,
That's the thing. That's the other way they're going to fall apart.
yeah,
I mean, he surrounded himself with idiots. The incompetence level is off the charts. As soon as you get a real thing to do in the FBI, you get little dinky Kash Patel swinging his legs on a big chair at the restaurant, tweeting from the restaurant. Can you just see it? It's an
yeah.
SNL sketch. He doesn't know what to do. So one by one, Trump is going to be faced with these more and more complex issues, and he has no one to turn to. He himself is completely out to lunch. He's demented, quite clinically demented at this point, but he's never that bright to begin with. I don't mean demented as a put down. I mean he
No,
has
no,
dementia.
I'm
Yeah,
just, I'm thinking, I'm flashing ahead on just the literalism of just because you can't, you see him every day. We have to, we, at least in America, I think we're seeing him every day and he impresses himself in our consciousness every day. But what's so interesting from a symbolic point of view is you are looking at a human body that is disintegrating in front.
deteriorating.
I mean, I'm not being melodramatic. Those shots
No,
of him
no, it's
at,
obvious.
in the UK with the king and all, I mean, it looked like something out of the cabinet of Dr. Kilgary,
Yeah,
some
he
of those.
was.
And I just thought, and here's my sun, my moon Neptune comes through. I'm like, oh my God, that person's in a lot of pain.
Yeah, he's in
You
pain.
know, like
He has
that
no
I
love in his life, too. I mean,
it
and
just
he knows people despise him.
it's heartbreaking.
He's it. You have to look at this on those two levels we were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, his he was up in front of world leaders in London, and he knows on some level. I mean, he has zero self-awareness, but some his body knows, his unconscious knows
Hmm.
that the
Hmm.
world is laughing at him. He's up there in his speech, he's stumbling over the words. That press conference in front of world leaders was a total disaster. On some level, he knows that. And this is what I think of as the Neptune at the IC.
Yes.
It's like it's a microcosm. His person, his personage, is a microcosm of the rules-based world order, Saturn, created after World War II, melting down,
Hmm.
Neptune.
Hmm.
People looking at this fraudulent, pathetic old man and his, you know, model trophy wife with, no personhood to her at all,
Well,
as kind of a symbol of what's happening to this hyperpower. Hyperpower is melting. So all the rest of the countries, they're trying to stifle a laugh at him. They humor him, they flatter him, sure. But they go home and they're planning their own way without the USA. The USA as world leader is gone. You just look at the guy.
okay, that wraps up part one of my discussion with Jessica Murray. I'll have part two up in 2 or 3 days, depends on how the editing's going to go on this. So please join us for that. If you're not a paid member of Woodruff, my newsletter here on Substack, please click the link below. There's a 20% off special going right now. You'll want to take advantage of that. Thanks so much. See you guys in part two.